Welcome to Front Office Pros. Today, we're going to be predicting the biggest NFL draft surprises.
Hike!
The NFL draft is here before we know it. We're only going to be 2 days away. So we thought, let's kind of think in the future here, Joe. We're going to be each providing 3 of the biggest NFL draft surprises that we anticipate happening. So what is your first one?
Yeah, first one I decided to go with is running back Ashton Jeanty being the only running back taken in the first round of the draft.
Ooh, what makes you say that, Joe?
Well, I was kind of just obviously in our last episode doing our mock, just kind of how things kind of worked out, and I could actually see it happening. Just the fact that you get the depth of defensive players. And then the depth at running back too, and I think that could cause guys like Marion Hampton or maybe Henderson that doesn't get taken in the first round just because the running back depth is there, and maybe teams decide to go with other positions, and it's not one of the you hear all the time. It's not one of like the top priority positions that you typically would take at the running back position. I know Jeanty's potentially the exception, which is why I think he might be the only one.
So let me go on the flip side here. And my biggest NFL draft surprise is I think 3 running backs get taken in the first round. Ashton Jeanty, Omarion Hampton, and TreVeyon Henderson, who we're not seeing mocked that often in the first round. My reasoning being is in this draft, you've got those positions that are, I forgot what the terminology they usually call them, but they're like the guys that are worth drafting high. These are your offensive linemen, your defensive linemen, your quarterbacks, your receivers, right? So defensive line's high, but you've got in non-premium positions, I think is what they call it, right?
There
You
it
got tight ends and running backs who they are not premium position, but you've got some top talent in both of those categories. So to me, the question will be, will these NFL teams reach on premium premium positions, right? Even though the players aren't worth getting taken there, or do they say, no, we're going to take talent regardless of it not being a premium position, and they're going to draft running back and tight end? So I'm going to go with the hunch. Now this is about surprises, right? So I think a lot of people will be quite surprised in both our scenarios where only one running back is taken and 3 get taken.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. And, I know people are talking about the, premium position 2 being offensive line, and potentially the Patriots taking Will Campbell at 4 is essentially a reach on a premium position. So if that continues to happen, then you'll see these non-premium guys like an Ashton Jeanty or, even the top tight ends, those guys could end up falling out a little bit later into the draft.
Yeah, well, all the top draft analysts, if you hear what they have to say, they'll say a guy like Will Campbell, he's more in the 10-12 range. He has no business being the number 4 overall pick. But when it comes to offensive tackles in general, that second tier is kind of not there. So if you miss out on the first tier, you're out to lunch on the second. So that's where maybe you see those guys creep up. But again, are these teams willing to reach on those premium positions where the value's not there, or are they going to go with the non-premium? And I think Denver is a pivotal spot and why I think the third running back comes to play. Mocked TreVeyon Henderson there. I could see there's rumors of the Broncos trading up, but there were rumors last year the Broncos trading up for a quarterback. They did not. They stuck pat. I could also see them trading down. They're at a really nice landing spot at number 20, right before the Pittsburgh Steelers at 21. If these NFL teams think that possibly Pittsburgh is going to take a quarterback, could certainly see a move up to go up to number 20 to leapfrog the Pittsburgh Steelers. So the Broncos are in a really good spot. Jeanty's obviously going to get drafted. Question will be Hampton, and then I think Henderson possibly as a third guy there.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Yeah, Broncos are in an interesting position at 20, and we'll see how it shakes out.
All right, so what's your second biggest NFL draft surprise?
Yeah, my second biggest surprise is Tetairoa McMillan falls out of the first round and ends up getting taken in the second round.
Whoa, that's a big one. What was your reasoning behind that?
Because I struggle with teams that will end up taking McMillan. I know that there's the buzz that maybe the Cowboys do, but then there's also the fact that everyone seems to think if they go wide receiver, it's probably Matthew Golden. So if that's the case, and McMillan slips, I don't know, maybe the Broncos take him, but they also just the different people talking about McMillan and the fact that some people think like he's not deserving to be in the first round. They, like you were mentioning before, they question whether or not this guy really likes football or not. Doesn't watch the film. So I feel like there's a lot of questions spiraling on McMillan. And if there's not a team that necessarily just absolutely loves his production, I could see him end up not being a first round pick.
Yeah, what was it? Todd McShay has him rated as like the 50th.
Yeah, he's number 50 for McShay.
Yeah, so he has him way below. So you have, there's rumors. If you look at FanDuel draft odds, you've got Tetairoa McMillan. They're saying is creeping up to number 5 for the Jaguars. So he seems to be all over the board.
Yeah, well, that's what I mean. Like, I just feel like teams either like really love him or teams are uncertain about him, and maybe they aren't as high on him and have him more on the level of where Todd McShay's got him. And if that's the case, then he wouldn't necessarily go in the first round.
So my second biggest NFL draft surprise is going to be quarterback Jalen Milroe gets drafted in the first round. We've been hearing a lot of buzz about him being drafted in the first round. Everything that you read and hear, they'll say that really Cam Ward is the only deserving quarterback to be drafted in the first round. Had these guys been in the class last year, you're talking the best guy being 6th or 7th. But when it comes to Milroe, he provides a unique skill set that none of them do with his athleticism and his speed. You see players like Lamar Jackson, Jalen Hurts, those type of players who have really just changed the game because they're game changers. So I think at the end of the day, somebody may be really interested. And I find it very peculiar that Jalen Milroe is invited to the green room for the NFL draft. We don't typically see, you saw a guy like Will Levis get slipped into the second round. But more often than not, these players end up going there because they anticipate that they are going to be selected in the first round. So you saw Jackson Dart, I believe, was going to be going, and he now is not going to go. So what does that tell you? If there's any, Shedeur Sanders was never going to go.
Oh, well, he got invited, but he wasn't going.
Yeah, right. But yeah, he was never going to go. He was not interested in going. But to me, with the Dart piece, like, okay, you saw him flip. Milroe's not flipping. So to me, I would think that Milroe's going to get drafted in the first round. I really do. I think some team is going to trade up and go get him.
Yeah, I could see that. I know it is interesting. That is the latest buzz, is just the fact that he is standing pat and gonna attend the draft. He was invited, so it'll be interesting if there really is something to that, or if he just kind of wants to be there for the draft process, even though he may not get taken to the second round.
All right, Joe, what is your last biggest NFL draft surprise?
Yeah, so my last one is going to be Jahdae Barron not being a first round pick either. And I just feel like we've seen this before. We've seen this with Brian Branch. And then last year, Cooper DeJean, thought those guys were for sure fires, first round pick at some point, and they all fall into the second round. And Jahdae Barron, I feel like, is that same type of guy, slot corner, but then also could kind of be used in the, nickel situations as well. Kind of that chess piece on defense, the Swiss Army knife type of player. So based on some of the recency bias with the previous years in the NFL with those type of players not being taken in the first round. I know he's kind of a hot name and people are pretty high on him, but we'll see what happens.
Well, it's that question of that nickel position, right? Where, at the end of the day, it's becoming more of a starter. It really is. But teams are not seeing it as a premium position, so they're not willing to draft it high. So I could definitely, he's a guy, he's a darling in the draft community. A lot of people really like him and his versatility. Question will be, like you said, will a team actually feel it's worthy of a first-round pick? So, but I think the NFL Draft Committee, if this does happen, they'll be up in arms. They'll be like, how on earth did this guy make it, to the second round? I can't believe it. So there will be an outcry if this guy doesn't make it.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, hey, I was an outcry of like the last 2 years. I was like, why didn't Brian Branch get taken? We done the mock drafts. I thought Brian Branch was going to take it in the first round. Thought Cooper DeJean for sure, guy I really liked, was going to get taken in the first round. He doesn't go in the first round. And then this year we have a lot of premium position players with the depth of the defensive line. So I think teams could just prioritize these edge rushers and interior defensive linemen over, a nickel corner guy like Barron.
All right, so my final prediction for the biggest NFL draft surprise, I'm only going to go with 2 wide receivers drafted in the first round, and most notably, Emeka Egbuka, not drafted in the first round. He's a guy who's been oftenly mocked in the back end of the first round. People will say draft. I don't talk to people in the league, but they'll say anyways that he's him and Jalen Walker are just some of the most best character guys. NFL locker rooms, NFL front office. They just feel that he would be a great fit for their teams. As a result, he'd be a great selection. But I think he's just kind of blasé. I don't think he has a lot of. I think obviously he was one of the most productive receivers in Ohio State. I know you like him a lot, Joe, but I think at the end of the day, he's a second-round talent. I think these teams are not going to reach on, even though wide receiver is a premium position, there's a lot of positions, especially a defensive line and offensive line, that are quite deep. So I'm seeing guys like Emeka Egbuka, Luther Burden. Those guys, they just don't get drafted in the first round.
Yeah. I mean, I mocked Egbuka into the first round, but I didn't have Burden. I definitely think he falls to the second round. I know you're all about the flashy guys. Sometimes you keep saying like he's blasé. Like maybe that's just because he's very refined and just does things very well. He's just a really reliable. Sure, he's not going to make the flashy like big plays, but he's just a really solid guy, and he's got a high football IQ. And like you said, I mean, one part of the reason that I had him go in the first round was just like you said. I mean, people around their league are just saying they talk to these NFL GMs and they have nothing bad to say about the guy, just how great he is in the locker room, how smart of a guy he is. And he's a really great route runner that just understands football and knows how to get open. And there's still room for that. And, these NFL teams need that.
When's the last time that you remember a guy with his traits being drafted in the first round?
Yeah, I mean, you're not wrong. They don't typically. This is to think of one. They typically,
even your boy Chris Godwin, I think, was a second-round pick.
Yeah, no, he wasn't even a first rounder. You're not wrong there. But this is also a really like a weaker wide receiver class. I mean, I know people are saying, like any one of these, like the top wide receiver was probably like the 6th or 7th best wide receiver from last year's draft.
I think it's more possible, and maybe this would be an even bigger surprise. I think it's even possible that Luther Burden gets drafted ahead of a guy like Egbuka because of his traits. I know a lot of the reasons why he's not in the first round is due to character concerns. If a team is not concerned about that, Luther Burden could definitely be a first-round pick, no questions asked.
Yeah. I mean, I think everyone keeps talking about this too. Do you go based on traits or production? And I think it'll be interesting to see how NFL GMs, will treat that. I know a lot of teams kind of like the traits and like to plan on what it could be, but I also think there's plenty of teams, and I know if I was a GM, I'd probably like to focus on more so on the production side.
So that does it for this episode. We went through some possible scenarios where we anticipate some big NFL draft surprises. These may or may not happen, but we thought, hey, for this exercise, let's kind of imagine what we think could happen. If you haven't done so already, check out our most recent episode where we went through the Front Office Pros 2025 NFL mock draft. You got mine and Joe's mock draft, 2 for the price of 1 for the episode. You're not going to want to miss that. The draft is only, hours away, so we're looking forward to it. And if you're watching or listening to this, I'm sure you are as well. Thank you so much for tuning in, and until next time.